Everybody, welcome to We've Got Ward, a Daily Planet Productions podcast series where we expertly dissect and discuss Ward, Wildbow's return to the world of parahumans. My name is Matt Freeman, and I am a giant caterpillar with a face. And this is my friend swimming around inside my body, Scott Daly.
Hey everybody, welcome to We've Got Ward, a Daily Planet Productions podcast series where we expertly dissect and discuss Ward, Wildbow's return to the...
Now, baby caterpillar Scott, we already did that part.
Oh. This is the weekly podcast where you and I eagerly dive into Wildbow's world of general fucky effects and alien-based death powers as we analyze and interpret this ongoing web serial. This week we are back in the Beacon, and we're here to talk about chapters 8.4, 8.5, and 8.6. It's been quite a while, Matt, since we've talked about new chapters.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited about this.
Both of us forgot how to do this podcast again.
Yeah.
So...
that happens just constantly.
It appears to take like 8 days for us to forget because 7 days and we're fine. Anything past that and no. But yeah, these are some fun chapters. I think it's crystallizing that our guess that the beacon in this story was Victoria's beacon of trying to draw together the superheroes to work together in some new framework. And there's other things that could be going on. There's definitely some subtextual things with what's going on with various characters in these chapters. There's at least one other beacon that I can think of, but we will talk about all that when we get there.
Yeah, you're right. There's so much going on here, and the stuff that I really like that I hope we're going to get into is a lot of the subtle stuff going on in the background. I think Victoria's plan is taking center stage, is like this shining beacon in front of everything, but we have working in the background some subtle character movements, especially with Sveta with these three chapters that I just found really interesting. And I look forward to diving into those with some attention, because I don't think it bodes well for our tentacle lady.
Yeah, definitely. So some quick announcements. First of all, a reminder for the fan art contest. You have 3 weeks from the time that you're listening to this, assuming you're listening to it immediately when it drops, because of course you are.
Yes.
To submit your entry for the 4th Worm/Ward quarterly fan art contest. Entries are due Friday, August 17th at 11:59 p.m. Central Time. Check out the link in the description of this episode for more details.
Yeah, there we go. 3 weeks left. There's still plenty of time. So if you haven't started drawing yet, do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
You can do it. I believe in you individually. All right, so Community Spotlight, where we read what people wrote from last week's thread. So last week was our mailbag episode, so we didn't have too much discussion going on in the thread, and no direct answers to our mailbag questions, but we did get one mailbag question via email right as we were recording that didn't make it on the episode. But I thought we had time to circle back around and do it today because it's a good one.
Yeah, so Lucas asked us, how do you weigh the important things like numbers, scientific accuracy, and more extensively or comprehensive world buildings against the focus of the narrative, especially in a semi-rational fiction like Worm or Ward? How do you balance those components? And does the web serial format change how you go about that number science balancing and world building? So I thought this is a pretty fascinating question, Matt, because I think it gets to this idea of, in any kind of story, how much importance is placed on accuracy, scientific accuracy of numbers. Like, I think what Lucas is specifically referring to here is times when like people have called out Wildbow for saying, this wasn't the right number of passage of time, or the population should have been higher, or that rock should have been heavier. Like what is the importance of the balance between making your numbers add up correctly versus serving your story?
I mean, I think this is actually a pretty deep question because it's definitely possible to get this wrong. And I'm not even sure that I could articulate why exactly I think Worm and Ward and the Parahumans universe does it so well. I mean, it has always been one of my kind of one of the things that makes this kind of elevates it to me is the fact that it is this superhero story, but it exists within what I consider to be a fairly robust science fiction framework where while those actually thinking about things like keeping track of matter and energy. And yes, there's also like space warping effects and interdimensional things that don't have any, like, we don't actually know if that's possible, and it probably isn't possible the way it's portrayed in the story, but that's sort of the sci-fi conceit, and you just kind of roll with it, and it makes everything else make sense. Like, so I think it works very well as a science grounding. It works for me, as someone who cares about these things and thinks about these things. I don't know. Maybe there are some people who like are completely derailed when they hear some, number that doesn't make sense to them. But I was never, my suspension of disbelief was never broken in any of these stories due to something that the powers did, because I could always, even if it did sort of like catch my attention, it was usually something that I could think about and think like, well, how would the shards do that? That's my thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, my answer is just that, I think narrative trumps everything. Like even that scientific stuff is a slave to the narrative, and a book, we've said this many times before, but a book teaches you how to read it. So the book basically establishes what are the important numbers, the important facts, the important scientific things, and what are the things that it doesn't care about as much. And so as long as the story holds true to the own rules that it's set up in regards to those things, serve the narrative, do that kind of stuff. I think things like when we get down to the nitty gritty of numbers and like plotting out the exact weights or numbers of population or things like that are just not the level of detail of facts and numbers in science fiction that this book wants to get into. I think you're absolutely right that it wants to largely stay true to the fictional world that it has created, but it just doesn't have time, and I don't think it should, to get down to the nitty gritty of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it does just enough explanation that you follow what's going on without being bogged down in it.
Right. But I think even books that are slaves, like that are like really, really hard science fiction that want every number to add up, every scientific thing to have basis in our reality, I think it's still doing that in service of the story, in service of the narrative. It's like, it's just decided this is the story I want to tell. And so I think it all follows that always.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I always rave about Blindside, is because it is this hard science fiction story, but it's actually the characters that are the part that I love. So,
yeah, absolutely. So good question, Lucas. Sorry we didn't get to fit it in last week, but we recorded that episode on time, which is early for us these days.
Yeah. All right, let's move on into the chapters and start up with 8.4. And we open this chapter clarifying that indeed our gross eye boy Crystal Clear is indeed an inmate of the parahuman prison. The Team Breakthrough members discuss a bit how the prison works, with the genders taking turns exercising in the yard, and then they go into the rules of the exercise area, many of which are enforced by the pecking order of the prisoners themselves. Yeah,
this is another example of, just really great world building detail here. There's been a few clues, I think, earlier in the story that the prison was going to end up like probably a pretty important key location. But I think the fact that we take the time to really lay out the pecking order, as you said, is an even bigger indication of that to me. Where we're establishing the rules of the prison, both the formal rules by the authority and the unwritten rules by the prisoners. And then we're kind of firmly like sitting our two characters into this. We define how they fit into these rules, these roles. And so we take all this time to do this. We set the scene so that we can later call back to it and drop back into it and understand it. And I think that's just, really good storytelling.
Yeah, not just our two characters, but we're introducing a few other characters who are tangential, but right. we get their names, we get their attitudes, and even if we never hear about them again, that's good world building, but you kind of suspect that we might hear about them again.
We will.
Yeah.
And so you were trying to do this thing, Matt, where you were just going to skate by the part where two of our characters just joke about how long they can last.
Uh-huh.
and I'm not going to let you do that. I'm not going to let it happen.
All right, let's discuss this for 25 minutes.
The crazy part about this scene is it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And like it's so funny because like everyone is uncomfortable as soon as they go down this road. Like I understand it's two kids joking around, but like Lookout is uncomfortable, Victoria is uncomfortable, Sveta is uncomfortable, and then Tristan jumps in with this line here that says everything's fair game so long as nobody's uncomfortable. And I was gonna be like, dude, read the room and stop talking about how long it takes you to jizz around the 11-year-old girl.
Yeah. See, I read Sveta as being uncomfortable. I don't know if I think I just read Victoria like rolling her eyes in the like, oh boys way. And I couldn't.
That's uncomfort though. That's like,
I guess, yeah. I guess that's a form of discomfort. Not the same as Sveta, who's like disturbed by it and wants them to stop talking about it.
Yeah,
sure.
But I actually think like as much as this is a fun little joke side beat, I think what we're doing is early establishing here. Like Sveta is the one that breaks this up, and she's the one that's actually. You're right. I think out of all these people here, she is the most uncomfortable, and we're getting ourselves primed. I think for a few chapters that are going to address some of Sveta's issues, and that's all I'll say for now. But I think this just serves as us to kind of get into the mindset of this is going to be a chapter, a series of chapters where we're dealing with Sveta's uncomfort.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's definitely
discomfort.
That's definitely in here in this arc. So yeah, Crystal Clear apparently has been talking to a lot of other people, like an unusual amount, and this is why he stood out to Ashley.
Yeah, because he's like a spy and stuff, right? That's what he is.
I mean, so I don't know. We avoid the theory stuff, but the last we saw of Crystal Clear, he was talking about like some sort of clandestine relationship with the wardens, and he does have a perfect power for keeping an eye on things and spying. So I have ideas of why he's in the prison.
I refuse to believe my good Crystal Boy has done anything wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
And therefore he has to be a spy.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, yes. So, yeah, so they also mention, just kind of catching us up with all the characters in the background, that Love Lost is hanging out with Damsel's villain friends, formerly of Hollow Point, and Love Lost now seems to be the leader.
I really, really like how this whole thing unfolds. We talked about way back in the day that there might have been this like actual bonding between Ashley and these villains she's hung out with. And like after Eclipse, we know that Ashley really like has this desire to be around people. She just feels like she can't. So she's like separated herself and isolated herself. But in this moment, she just says, "Oh, my friends." And it's just so casually dropped in here. Nobody comments on it. We don't have this big, long Victoria, "Oh no, I'm worried about Ashley" moment where she says, "Oh God, she's really friends with these people. What does that mean?" It's just a thing we throw out there. Just a true fact about Ashley that she did truly consider these people her friends. Yeah,
that's funny. I don't want to say I glazed over it, but I don't think I like absorbed the fact that she's like, oh, my friends, and then there's potentially people they're going to have to fight later. So yeah, that's important and interesting. Cool. Yeah. So Ashley then recounts how she won over the leader of the women's block by tearing off her own hand dramatically. For some reason, I just thought it was hilarious when she's kind of bragging about this, and Rain is like, "Messy," and then says to Sveta, and then says very seriously to Ashley, "Messy," because I don't know. You could easily imagine the whole story of like him being woken up in a rush to come patch up like as she's bleeding out, and she just did it to like make a point. It's such an Ashley thing to do, and such a Rain situation to find himself in.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think what this thing does really cool for me is that like there's a lot of interaction at the beginning of this chapter where we're defining the prison and defining each of these character roles in them, as we said. And Ashley seems to be doing okay in prison. Like she's got respect of one of the strongest people there by doing crazy Ashley things. Rain It's not doing too good. He's like bored. He like hasn't really talked to anyone because like the only way you can really talk to people is by either like running while chatting or being good enough to be on the basketball court. And like he feels like on the guy side, the only people that are controlling the basketball court, the only way to influence them would be to kill someone. So he's just like, his prison is not a good experience so far. And I think that's very on brand for these two characters.
Yeah, it is interesting that he's not like, it's not worse, right? Like
No.
yeah, you're exactly right that he's not thrilled to be there, but it's kind of like I guess living with the Fallen for so long has kind of desensitized him to some things, because like if I was in prison and I was like meeting you at the little phone booth and I was like, I was like, yeah, you know, I'd have to kill someone to be allowed to use the basketball court. I wouldn't be like saying that casually. Yeah. I would be like haunted and
sure.
So that's kind of been his life for a while though, basically.
Yeah. I mean, his biggest problem right now seems to be that he's just bored, which is, I mean, for the life Rain has had, not a bad problem to find yourself in.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, he's definitely not like slipping into the prison lifestyle the way that Ashley is, which I don't think anyone really expected him to.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's something here that I wanted to point out before we move on. There's a moment where after Ashley casually talks about ripping her arm off, and we see Kenzie's response here, which is to say, awesome. Lookout reacted to the self-dismemberment with awe and glee, because of course she did. And the thing I find interesting about this is Victoria's response here. She doesn't really see this as I need to be worried about Kenzie or try to root out what this means or think I have to talk through with her later. No, it's this quick semi-sarcastic quip that I don't think, I might be wrong, but I don't think I've seen her use that because of course blank kind of talk before. It's very sarcastic. And so it jumped out to me here, and it jumps out to me especially because it's not the last time she's going to use it in these chapters we're talking about. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention here so I could also talk about it later. Yeah,
you're right. It's sarcastic, and it expresses a bit of frustration too.
Yeah,
yeah. Let's move on, and then I look forward to pointing out the latter ones.
Yeah.
So before they're forced to leave, Lookout mentions that they'll send books with the care package and that she sleeps with her head on a book sometimes. Nothing stands out about this.
Yeah, it's really funny because like on further analysis, when you go back and read it a second and a third time, this really does jump out to you, right? Like at least to me, like this is like, yeah, this was really weird. But on my first read through, like Kenzie has been so long established as this character who just like talks and talks and talks about this random stuff sometimes. So I think it's very easy to dismiss this as just more of that. And I think this is how a clever writer can hide information in plain sight as long as he stays true to who the character is. Like, yeah, Kenzie, in retrospect, a lot of what she's saying here is like targeted and weird. Like if we look, it's like, I had stacks of them on my bed piled high enough that they could have tipped over and bruised me. I'd sleep with my head on a book sometimes. Like those two thoughts don't really add up. And it's because she's specifically targeting this last sentence for information passing. But she's also someone that just likes to talk a lot. So yeah. Wildbow has hidden this information inside the normal everyday musings of a character. And it doesn't, at least to me, didn't jump out to me on first read.
It only jumped out to me in the sense that I didn't doubt it. I was just like, man, I don't think that'd be so uncomfortable. That'd be incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like to the point where I was like, I don't. Is that true? Like, is she? I don't know. I definitely reacted to it in a way. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I didn't just glaze over it. But I should have thought more about it though.
She's just bad at sleeping. So
yeah, that's true.
Maybe that's why she's so bad at sleeping. It's because she's sleeping on books.
You're right. Yeah. So as they leave, Lookout hooks a sudden turn, being lured into the clutches of Monokeros, who lures her in like some kind of beacon. Ashley makes Monokeros back down, but the incident promises future consequences.
Yes, stupid unit jerk messing with Ashley's favorite person. That's not going to have any kind of lasting consequences. I like that the text doesn't even really try to hide that. Like, it specifically shows us how mad Ashley is. Victoria describes her as more pissed than she had been with Beasts of Burden. She is furious here. And she holds strong, at least for now. She realizes she needs to think and says, I'm going to go for a run and I'm going to think this stuff through. And that's like a literal example of learning from your mistake.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, that's great. Because what Victoria said about when she killed Beast of Burden was that she saw nothing of the Ashley that she knew.
Yeah.
And if she's that pissed off, but she still retains control, then that definitely indicates some growth.
Good job, Ashley. Way to not kill someone.
Yeah. So all this prompts some of the other team members to note that they only ever get a jittery oh shit feeling from Victoria's aura, which we'll later see as a bit of a blow to her, because I don't think she realized this. She's been thinking of it as awe or fear, depending on who experiences it. But, like learning that her friends experience it as fear is shocking to her, because they should, in theory, be experiencing it as awe.
Yeah. This is interesting. And from my analysis, this could mean a couple things, because first of all, we only have very specific people in the group that speak up and confirm that it has the jittery oh shit bits in it. Chris and Tristan are the ones that only say specifically, it's always that for us. The way Kenzie describes it, it seems like maybe Kenzie experiences it like the awe one sometimes too. So it's not always that way for her. So it's either these people just have a perception of Victoria that she didn't realize, or her aura just doesn't work the way she thought it did. And she just has a misunderstanding of how this thing works. And maybe it's less how people perceive you and more, Victoria, how you are perceiving the people you're shooting your aura out at, which is an interesting wrinkle in this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think my first thought was like, maybe it's just not working the same way anymore. Like maybe this is one of the ways in which it's changed.
That's absolutely true too. And it makes you think, right? Because speaking of perceptions, we've had her use this thing in battle constantly, and she's going to use it a bunch this week as well. And think of all her teammates, the people around her. If it's not working the way it did, if everyone is experiencing fear, unless there's a specific case like Kenzie, then every time she uses it on bad guys, all her allies, everyone she's trying to bring together, all this cooperation she's trying to make, like, she's a beacon of fear then. And that's not what she wants.
Yeah, no, I like that. You're right. Yeah, so they head back to the hideout. We skip a little bit of time, and they start putting together Victoria's plan. Kinsey hooks up her Tinker internet, which is probably illegal.
Yeah, I think that's pretty safe to say.
And then Victoria explains her agenda for the teams as finding and focusing on the threats that their team can most appropriately address.
Yeah, and like we touched on this plan a little bit last week, and I think we're going to spend some more time on it this week. I think this portion of it makes a lot of sense to step back from the day-to-day crime fighting and go for the big fish. You know what I'm not really seeing with this plan at all, though, Matt?
What?
Coordination with anyone that is not a cape.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe talk to the cops. Just let them know what you're doing at all. Maybe no,
Mm-hmm.
None of that.
Nah.
Yeah. So I think this is more kind of evidence that the capes are going forward with their kind of ignored the people we're trying to save portion of their planning. And I think that the capes or the non-capes are going to go forward with their more, we hate capes, we want to exclude them from anything we're doing type of planning. And that's only going to create bad outcomes.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, it's interesting. You're picking up on something that's not in the story. And it's interesting that we can definitely draw conclusions from this, because our whole last arc wrapped up with a big fat warning about what happens when you disregard the humans and when they start to feel like they're out of the loop.
Yeah.
So Victoria and Tristan observe that Kinsey and Chris are conspiring, and after a little bit of back and forth, they realize that Kinsey and Chris conspired to smuggle some of Kinsey's tech into the prison inside a Maggie Holt novel. And I think it's really interesting the form that Kinsey's argument takes. It's basically, you guys are all potentially super lethal, or could be if things were desperate. Things are desperate, so let me use my power all out.
Yeah, this is a really interesting line of thinking now, isn't it? Because I don't think she's necessarily wrong. We've seen Victoria, we've seen other capes get pushed into the state of not holding back. And for the most part, when they get there, we've agreed with the need for it. But Kenzie's power is not one that lends to that kind of crisis situation. Like, her getting pushed to the need of going all out is going to look very different from a brute class person getting pushed to that need.
Mm-hmm.
So if the universe, if the rules of capes decide that we're okay with Victoria smashing a dude's jaw off because he's about to do something really bad, is this not an argument? Is this not a good argument for why the universe should be okay with Kenzie taking control of a prison system, even though it's clearly illegal? And if not, what does it say about the society that chooses to separate those two things as one is acceptable and the other is not?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely a lot to go into here, because the knee-jerk reaction is to say, like, well, what Victoria did was like a heat of the moment emergency, like almost self-defense. I mean, you could even make a case that it was self-defense, but the thing is, do you get to say that it was self-defense if you literally pick the fight and fly up to the guy and it's based on the context, it's not really self-defense. It was a battle. It was a battle that she entered willingly with the intent and the willingness to harm people. And Kinsey, likewise, as a cape, is basically asking to be given the same level of like carte blanche with, I guess, just doing whatever she can do as the situation merits it. And that's definitely risky depending on which powers we're talking about, because some people's powers should never be allowed to use their powers all out, yeah. Right? And so I don't think it is a very good argument that Kinsey's making, but only because I think that a lot of the stuff that the capes do as a matter of course sort of skirts a line that of things they shouldn't be doing anyway.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I just find it interesting that, like, we could say, okay, Victoria, you're out in the field and you feel threatened, and so you have to go all out. You have to act right now. Kenzie, you will never be in that situation because of the type of power you have. So, like, even if you feel your version of threatened and backed into a corner, you can't do that. Mm-hmm. But I think the interesting thing about this is I don't think the book is necessarily even like building that as that complex of an argument. That the team certainly doesn't even really argue with Kenzie here. Their concern seems to mostly be around the fact that she did this unilaterally without letting any of them know, except for Chris, without telling them, without asking. She just did it. And that the main concern they all have seems to be built around that. Like Victoria says very specifically, we talk this sort of thing out first. This is the exact opposite of what we're trying to do. Her whole thing is cooperation and communication, not just within the team, but amongst all teams. And how can we expand cooperation and communication amongst everyone if we can't have that thing in our own group? And that is the kind of the point of problem for everyone on this team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so we also learned that Chris's being stupid last episode is revealed as having been part of the ploy, which is kind of delightful, because we both kind of went on for a bit about how Chris was being ostentatiously stupid and like he should know better than to behave this way. So to learn that this is part of a plan was fun, because I was like, oh, I knew he wasn't stupid.
Yeah, we noticed the way the character was being drawn because it was different from how he normally is, which is, again, I think that's good character work. We just didn't get the motivation for that change in character quite right. I still think there's some real crisis stuff going on with Chris under the surface, but yeah, this specific moment of him acting slightly different was for a very specific reason, and I think it's cool that we can see that because the characters are so well defined that differences in actions jump out at you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. That's part of why I thought it was delightful. Exactly.
So there's this really like brief blink and you'll miss it Ashley's exchange that I wanted to just bring up just to make sure we didn't miss it, because while we're watching Slashly put the eye thing into Ashley, which by the way, like that could have gone really badly. Like Kenzie's like actually worried for a minute because there's like no instruction or anything. So very risky ploy here, Kenzie. But we see Slashly say, "Did you worry when I had my claw so close? Did you fear me?" It was the other Ashley talking to our Ashley. "I trust you as far as I trust myself." And Chris like dismisses this as like corny or them just trying to be cute or funny. But this feels like a very real interaction to me. Like Slashly is talking exactly the way you would expect her to, kind of the way we saw Ashley talk in those glowworm chapters. Very performative, very like kind of overwrought. Mm-hmm. And Ashley is responding exactly how I would think modern Ashley would, which is like she's kind of playing with words here a bit. Like she's like, "I trust you as far as I trust myself," which in theory would be a lot, but we know Ashley doesn't trust herself at all. So she's basically saying here with the turn of phrase, "No, I don't really trust you at all, but I don't trust myself either."
Yeah, that's interesting because in the past she would have said that and meant it, and now she's saying it ironically, and it's that's pretty cool.
It's just a little tiny interaction mixed in here that I just thought was absolutely delightful and needed to have some attention brought to it.
Yeah, I love it. So after castigating Kenzie for doing this risky, illegal thing, but not really doing anything about it except telling her that they'll have to delay their visit to the prison.
But to be fair, that is a pretty lethal consequence for Kenzie.
I suppose so. Anyway, then they move on to the next topic, records showing that Goddess has been trying to visit people in prison. Which is
the first of two kind of cliffhanger moments at the end of these chapters based on Goddess. So if you're guessing that the story is starting to set up a series of conflicts around Goddess, you would be correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And let's move on into 8.5.
All right.
So we seem to skip ahead a bit again.
Yeah, I just want to kind of quickly point out how we do this because I think it's really elegantly done. We show that time passes by kind of zooming in on Victoria's the healing of her bullet wound, because we now see that she flexed the arm that was no longer in the sling. The injury was still very much felt. So she's out of the sling, so time has passed to where she's no longer wearing the sling, but the injury is still felt, so not too much. So we very quickly established time's moved on a bit, but a couple days maybe. Not too much time has passed. It's just a really elegant way of doing that without saying like 3 days has passed.
Yeah, I agree. So Victoria, Capricorn, and Tress are waiting for a parahuman chase to swing by so they can jump in to help.
So I before we move on from this, I just want to focus on another thing that I think Wildbow spends a lot of time on here in the opening moments of this chapter. Victoria's phone, and more specifically, her phone's idle menu. We start with this bit right here, right after the first few opening lines that say, "I've been idle for far too long because the circle dropped down from the top, obscuring part of the screen. 2 options were on the circle. On the left, the phone offered the option of trying to draw power by way of ambient wireless energy, including solar, EM, and whatever else. It would put the phone in a rest mode. On the right, a music note and a list of my music with the phone browsing recent messages and context to try to smart pick a playlist of music to listen to based on my guest mood." So on the left, we got rest. On the right, there's mood music to try to match whatever mood you're in. And then in the middle, you've got this option to swipe up and like go back to whatever you were doing. And I think like Victoria's sitting here just kind of killing time, waiting, and she's just watching these two options, and she's kind of watching them shrink. So specifically, seeing the pie slice of rest shrink. So I think like these are Victoria's options. You can rest. You can maybe focus on your mood, focus on your emotions, and and those things that are leading you to those emotions, or you can swipe up and go right back to the thing that you were doing, ignoring those other two choices, which is exactly what she does.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. I mean, it's sort of awesome that Wildbow has chosen to do this here, where it's not Earth, so their phones don't have the OSs we have, and they first of all, they seem to have like basically Tinker technology, since they can draw power from the ether basically, and they also seem to have some sort of machine learning built in, which isn't necessarily Tinker tech, but kind of strikes me that it can't not be partly Tinker related. And then he takes this science fiction idea of how their phones work and how they're slightly different from ours, and then turns it into a character moment in the way that you described. I think that's awesome. No,
it really is. And I think there's something powerful to that image of Victoria sitting there seeing that pie slice of rest shrink. She's in the middle of executing this new plan of hers. She's a little frustrated. We saw in the last chapter her responses to some of her teammates goofing off, and some of her teammates' behavior was a little frustrating to her. And so it's just a great kind of window into how she's doing and what she's prioritizing.
Yep. So it turns out that they're all just hanging out near this really thick traffic, really, really bad, heavy traffic in the evening. Capricorn, at least, is in plain sight where everyone can see him, all the drivers of the people in traffic. And this whole thing put me on a mental tangent where, while I was reading, even the first time I was reading, I imagined being stuck in literally apocalyptic traffic and seeing superheroes just hanging around, just kind of watching the traffic, hanging out right by the bottleneck caused by construction, and thinking I might lump the parahumans in with like the cause of the traffic if I were in the situation, and consequently hate parahumans forever.
Yeah, especially when he's like surrounded by orange moats, right? And orange is like construction color.
Yeah.
So he's like, look, it's the construction cape ruining our lives.
Right.
Thanks.
Yeah. In fact, when I first started reading it, I assumed that he was literally helping the construction workers manage the traffic with his lights, like showing people where they could drive or something. That was my first thought. Turns out later, I think that he was just kind of sketching out where he wanted his blockade to be.
Yeah, he is talking with them. Like we do see him like communicate with the construction workers down there. So maybe he is trying to help in some way, but yeah, we don't really get any confirmation of that.
Yeah. So meanwhile, Tress is painting her body with her tendrils. Victoria comes and chats with her, and I was amused that she also had a similar thought that they ought to do something for the people stuck in traffic.
Yeah, but I think this is when we start really moving into these moments where we're exploring how Sveta's doing. We get to see her in this pretty like exposed place. She's out of her shell somewhat. She's painting it. She's literally creating herself, and we also see in this moment like how on the edge of control she is. There is a tendril that works its way around her face, gripping her eyelid, working its way into the socket. She shook her head fiercely, and it pulled away. I think this is narratively important because Wildbow is refreshing our memory on just how like tenuous her control can be, which ends up mattering later in the scene when her carapace is damaged. But more than that, this is a pretty fascinating window into Sveta in general, because first of all, she's doing this like in public, right? Like she's not as exposed as Capricorn is. She's not standing on top of a vehicle in front of all them, but she's out. And so she feels maybe safe and secure enough to do this outside. One of the first things Victoria thinks when she sees this is, hey, maybe this might not be safe enough with all these people around, but Sveta thinks it's safe. And I think it says something about how in control of her issues she feels like she is right now, and how damaging it would be to have a setback against that.
Yeah, that's, I think you can read a lot into it, and I don't know how far to go, because like we know that her control depends on her like mood and her state of mind and what's going on around her. So
Sure.
I can imagine it being safe for her to have her tendrils out in this context. But like if something were to suddenly happen and startle her, then somebody loses a hand. So yeah, that's kind of where my head went in terms of the risks that she may not be, not that she's not thinking about it, but I think she's at a point where she's willing to, I mean, she is isolated from people, I guess.
Yeah,
so
she is.
So,
I mean, it's not like she's being reckless or anything. I'm not trying to say that. I just think it says something about her that like she's exposing herself in a public place. She's not locked behind anywhere. I think that says something about her. And we're going to continue to kind of explore how she's doing generally. I think she feels like she has a pretty good handle on one portion of her life. It's another portion of her life that she feels like she doesn't have as big of a handle on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, good point. So this segues into Sveta admitting that she's struggled with the feeling that she's being self-indulgent and that other people are just taking care of her.
Yeah, not just other people. Weld, it all comes back to her boyfriend. Weld has been taking care of her from the start. We've seen he's dropped everything to help her. He went on that trip with her. She says here, she feels that she's not contributing enough to their relationship, and it's making her worried. And this is not the first time that Sveta has brought up boy trouble to people in the group before. It's just always getting interrupted. Like she brings it up and they start, and she's like maybe introduces the thing like just for a sentence or two, and then something else happens and it gets interrupted. And the same things happens here. I think she gets a little further along into it than she normally would, but she has had these recurring beats where she says she really has no one else to talk about this kind of stuff with. She said to Victoria, like she doesn't really have anyone else she can talk about this kind of guy stuff with. And other stuff keeps coming up. And that's what's getting me really worried about her is that like, and I don't think Victoria is doing it intentionally. I don't think Victoria is missing things in Sveta like on purpose, but I just think Sveta has the cape side of herself like as in control as it can be. And I think she, like we said, she feels pretty good about this part of her, but there's other parts of her life that I think are kind of quietly crumbling in the background, or at least she feels like they're quietly crumbling. And because those are so backgrounded and because of the way Sveta is, nobody's really noticing it.
Yeah, right. Like you can imagine it being a really big deal for her to be worried about her relationship with Weld, because she kind of never thought that she would have a boyfriend, much less that it would be Weld. And so you can imagine her having a lot of anxiety about it. Also, like Victoria has, up until basically the start of this arc, her focus has mostly been on her teammates. She's had this whole thing where like, what am I going to do, Jessica? How am I going to take care of these people, Jessica? We haven't heard a lot of what am I going to do, Jessica, in this arc. And I think that's because her focus, her sort of like competitive drive, we're seeing that athlete, we're seeing that daughter of Carol come out, is now focused on this new team organization idea. And it has like sucked all of the oxygen out of her other concerns. And I don't know if she's aware of that. I don't think she's compensating for the fact that her attention has been drawn this way. And like, I guess it'll be telling whether she goes back and kind of meets up with Sveta and is like, oh yeah, we never finished that conversation. Or if she's just like, forgets about it, because of where her attention is. That's
a very good point. Yeah, the shift of focus is a really good thing to call out, because I think that is absolutely true, because she has found a new mission to be successful with. And I think, not to say that the concerns of her group are not still there. They absolutely are. But I think you're right that they've kind of shifted to the background a little bit. Mm-hmm. And the final thing I'll say about Sveta is I think we've always believed that the crisis point for Sveta was going to be Weld. We've always thought that like if something happens between her and Weld, this is where we could see Sveta going down a bad road. I don't think we've ever really like, I think that the common assumption of that has been he's wounded or killed or ripped away from her. I don't think we've ever thought about just the mundane, hey, what if this relationship just doesn't work part of it? And I find that really fascinating, and I'm interested to see where it goes.
Yeah, me too. So this, as we were saying, this conversation is interrupted by Flapper, Shortcut, and Sprite showing up, chasing villains trial and error in a few trucks full of livestock and other materials.
Yeah. That was a whole weird thing that I don't want to get into, but I just want to say that I still can't believe that Sprite is the one I'm excited about seeing, and Shortcut is the one that I'm like, oh crap. Like, I was so down on Sprite's creepy, like, forward flirting to Victoria at first. Like, that made me so uncomfortable, but he's the neat guy now. And there's this moment when Victoria flies in to give him some of her flight power, and he's just like joyously screams, yes! Like, I think he's neat.
Yeah, there's something I picked up on in this chapter that I didn't actually before, which was that I think maybe he can only borrow mover powers because we've only seen him borrow mover powers. And he mentions that he has an intuitive sense for understanding how mover powers work.
Well, he gets Trials chains. Is that considered a mover power? Oh, does he
get well, see, he uses it as a mover power. That's the thing is depends on what his power. He does get Trials chains, but Trial uses, I don't know. I guess we're going to have to wait and see what else he ends up copying. I don't remember him.
Maybe he's just so bad at the non-mover powers, he just doesn't bother. Cuz they do say multiple times through these whole fights that, like, he's only really good at mover stuff. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like it would be a bit broken if you could copy any power, because then you could just like get to Alexandria's or to Valkyries or whatever if you just hang around. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. We'll see. So yeah, Trial controls thick chains, which he uses to move quickly and as a mode of attack and defense. And Error has a fucky effect around her, which we'll learn about as we go.
Yeah, Flapper describes it as a general fucked effect, which is pretty perfect.
Yeah. So Trial is strong enough to smash through a thick, badass, and decorated wall erected by Capricorn.
Yeah, and I think this is a really clever way to like immediately gauge power levels for the readers. We saw Tristan like spending a lot of time on this wall. Like, we saw the moat swirling, and then we take time to show, like, you're right, it's decorated. It has goat heads on it. He spent a lot of time constructing these things. And we know that the walls have stopped most tough capes. Like, even Moose had to punch through it a couple of times before he got through it, right? So Trial just goes right through it. So we've immediately got a handle on how powerful he is. And it's just one of these quick, efficient moments to me that just worked so well.
I have this question that I may be making way too much out of nothing, but there was the moment previously when Capricorn crushed the top with his fingers, and then there's a moment in these chapters when Victoria crushes the javelins using what seems like not very much strength to her. And I had this thought, like, what if Capricorn's stone is like getting weaker?
That's an interesting thought. I hadn't thought of that, but the evidence is there for that interpretation for sure. Yeah, I mean, we have not seen it like work well in a bit.
Yeah,
and we do get specific called out moments like the chains. He tries to stop the chains, and the assumption there is just, hey, Trial's really powerful, but what if it's not? Yeah,
it's a thought, and we will probably very quickly see whether it's right or wrong, but
it's fun to note anyway.
Yeah. So the flyers of the group try to attack fairly unsuccessfully due to Error's effect causing people to try to attack her being thrown off in ways that end up hurting their own side. Capricorn uses a cool move to fire water spears that then turn into stone javelins, which impale the ground and block the fleeing van. Having stopped the vans, the good guys face off with the villains. Victoria gives them poor grades on their costumes.
Not just their costumes, but on their names, their like whole deal. Like, she just grades everything about them bad. And like, she hates the name trial and error. She's like, doesn't make sense. Like, like she's like, the name error exposes too much about what your power is. Trial doesn't fit with it thematically. I think like I was trying really hard to find a way for why trial would work for a chain manipulator. And I guess if you like try really hard, you could maybe squint at a reason, but yeah, it's a pretty hard squint. And not one that our character wants to make at all. And I think there's purpose to this though. There's purpose to her taking the time to show how much she dislikes just everything about their whole thing. And it's because they're going to lose. And so she's going to talk about in the next chapter about how tenacious the team is and how they have to go out and take these people down. And I think part of that is because she disrespects this group so much and they lose to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I there's definitely anger. There's definitely anger backing it up. I think that's some of the sarcasm and the kind of viciousness that's entered her internal monologue. Dare I say even like the competitiveness again coming out, and because you're right, like it almost feels like we're seeing a different side of Victoria than we've seen up till now. I don't know if that's overstating it, but the fact that she's having these kind of aggressive thoughts, it doesn't really sound like the warrior monk so much. I
think it's a more focused. Mm-hmm. Trying to think of the right word. I don't think it's a completely different version of Victoria. I just think it's Victoria with a mission tends to act like this.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, so as the heroes stand off against the two villains, an attack from Trial damages Sveta's carapace. Afterwards, while Victoria is tending to the damage, the villains refuse to back down, despite Shortcut and Sprite emphasizing the rules. They even the villains even threaten to attack the injured Sveta and the civilians.
Yeah, which is again, I think, a pretty important factor into this whole galvanizing Victoria to put into effect her plan here, because these two don't give a shit about the rules, and I think that becomes even more important when we learn who they're working for in a bit.
Yeah, and speaking of Victoria being angry, I didn't pull the quote, but when they mention attacking her and Sveta, her response is like, if you do that, you'll just be a bloody smear on the pavement. Like it's like extremely vicious, and angry. So that goes into that kind of through line that she's got a lot of anger here.
Yes.
So as Victoria tries to patch up the damaged costume, the tendrils move around her, touching her. In turn, Victoria has her force field up, which incurs the risk of the wretch trashing Sveta's armor and completely freeing her or doing something else dangerous. This was just so tense, Scott.
It's so great. These two characters that are so close to each other relationship-wise, they both care about each other so much, are struggling because they're too close to each other. And I just love how this is described. A tendril wrapped itself around my hand. It's squeezed against my force field. The force field didn't break, but I was aware of the strain. Fuck me. I was too close to Sveta. I could see the whites of her eyes. She was too close to me. I destroyed door handles on the cars and pavements like this, and she was this close. I was too close to her. She was too close to me. They're both struggling to hold on to something that they both know is difficult to control. And I think, going back to that tendril in the eye moment, I think that is setting up this reminder that while yes, Sveta is in control, it is a perilous control, and it helps reinforce the tension of this scene, and it's so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wish we could dwell on that longer, but it's just a perfectly written, tense scene.
Yeah.
So once she drags Sveta out of harm's way, the heroes attack the villains again. Victoria is able to counter Error's power by kicking up a ton of dirt to shower down on her, blinding her long enough that she and Sveta can grab her.
Hooray! But wait, is this the second beat in our Scott Reads Too Much Into Things 3 beats?
Is it?
I believe it is.
Yay.
Because here's what Victoria says. She says, I hit the ground, scooping up as much of the wretch as I could get and sending a cascade of dirt and clumps of earth at Error and into the air. In this process, I hit Shortcut because of course I did. That's the second one.
Yeah.
It's the second one. It's another really sarcastic, frustrated comment from Victoria on the state of things.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. So I wonder if this is an intentional parallel here. This idea of villains trying to steal trucks of stuff and only getting away with some of them.
It's definitely not an intentional parallel.
I mean, stealing trucks is something that criminals do, but definitely reminds me of Ashley and her failed or partially failed robbery.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I mean, I think a callback to that imagery is, while possibly not intentional, is fair to do, certainly.
What it did for me was it made me empathize with trial and error more, and the fury and frustration they're feeling, because I remembered being in Ashley's head when she was stymied in her attempt to, rob. And so like I was kind of more like, uh-oh, if they're in anything like the headspace she was in, then the good guys should be worried.
Yeah, I like that.
So still, when Trial moves to attack the civilians in their cars, the heroes back down and let the two villains get away. Nobody's happy about it, least of all Tristan and Victoria.
Yeah, no surprise there. They do not like to lose, especially to B minuses, as Victoria called them, that break the rules.
I know. It's so offensive.
Yeah.
So Victoria now passes along her message to Sprite to offer to coordinate between teams to target the bigger problems.
Yeah, which because it's Sprite, it actually goes well. Not Shortcut, because he sucks. He's terrible. And then, Matt, at the very end of this chapter, we zoom back into Victoria's phone and that waiting program that started the chapter off. The phone has selected a song, Matt. It selected a song. The automated process for idling has selected one of the songs I downloaded for Gilpatrick during one of the patrol's visits to school. Gun Rules as a song for grade schoolers. Because of course it had. 3-beat. I need like a 3-beat soundboard.
Yeah, we need that.
Yeah. So I've been kind of mostly joking about this. I don't think this is like an intentional, like drawn 3-beat of using this phrase, but like, because of course it has is something I used to use in my writing like a lot. And to the point where I used to train myself to see it when I wrote it and then get it out of there. Not because I think it's like a bad turn of phrase and you shouldn't use it, but it just, I used it so damn much that I needed to calm it down a little bit. So that's why these like jumped out at me, I think, because I'm so used to seeing this in my writing and being like, Scott, you got to get that out of there, that when I read it in other people's writing, it just jumps out at me. But I mean, I think this is a really, really big indicator of her mood. As we've been saying this whole time, she is in a frustrated place, and she's kind of lashing out sarcastically because things just keep breaking against her. Like she's trying to do all these things. She's trying to keep all these plates spinning. And whenever things break a certain way, they of course break the way that is the most annoying for her. And I completely understand that kind of frustration.
Yeah, the gun song for grade schoolers thing is like the perfect representation of this is how things are now, where it's like we've accepted that the world is so crappy that we're just going to go ahead and teach the next generation that they have to know how to use guns to defend themselves. So her phone choosing to throw that in her face is like the perfect thing to get on her nerves at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's just like, it's, you understand her frustration, and I just hope that it doesn't lead somewhere bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, this could be leading down a road that has her lash out in a way that doesn't go well.
Yeah. So briefly at the end of this battle, she tries to use the wretch in a controlled and intentional and calm way to pick up and manipulate Capricorn's rock javelins. And after she maybe kind of has partial success, not really, the text says, "We'll work this out, I told the wretch."
Yeah.
Which is great.
The fascinating thing about this to me is she was going to do it in the heat of battle, almost like she was walking up to the javelins to pick them up right when I think it was Shortcut said no, stop, and like pulled it, like stopped the fight, and then they decided to let them go. So I wonder if she would have tried to do this in the heat of battle instead of in this calm after battle, let's test if I can do it mode. It doesn't work here, so it definitely wouldn't have worked like while she was in the middle of fighting. But this is kind of a huge moment for her, though, regardless, like of deciding to like take out this tool on her tool belt and use it. I think, and I don't think it's an accident that earlier in this section, Kenzie was talking about how all capes have these moments that they're pushed to where they have to go full force and can't hold back anymore. Because even when Victoria does go full force, she does it in a way that's like inherently chaotic because that's just the way the wretch works. And maybe she's seeing or wanting the warrior monkness of her to learn to control that force. So when she needs to go full force and use her whole repertoire of abilities, she does it in a controlled way. And I think that's very interesting. Yeah.
I mean, she is the person who understands the benefit of training. You know, she wants people to control and train their powers, and yet a little bit hypocritically, she has been avoiding using the wretch unless like absolutely necessary, rather than say going to some isolated area and seeing what she can get it to do, you know, trying different tricks to try to control it. And it's, maybe it's occurred to her that she should, maybe it hasn't, but regardless, the reason that she hasn't is that it's so unpleasant for her to use.
Yeah. But I think this is another kind of maybe shift in the move from coping to healing. Because like coping with the wretch is just like, I'm just not going to look at it. I won't look at it, and then it won't be there. But in order to get control of it, you're going to have to look at it. Like she says here, we'll work this out. She speaks to it and says, we will work this out.
Yeah.
So she's taking it upon as part of herself and saying, I'm going to find a way to get a handle on this. And that's a big step.
Oh yeah, this is huge. This is huge. Like it's thrown in there into the text. She doesn't dwell on it, but I thought I was thrilled that just that little sentence to herself in her head.
Yeah, I mean I'm glad you pulled that sentence out particularly because I think that says so much.
Yeah. So as Tristan informs her that it was Prancer's group behind this, she calls back to base and they begin to organize the follow-up strike to take these guys out.
So that Prancer, huh? He's doing well.
Yeah.
Remember when he was the guy who didn't have what it takes to lead the group of bad guys? And we kind of talked about what if he was pushed to that point? What would he look like? Maybe he'd look like having two people like this working for him who don't give a shit about the rules and are led down a super dark path.
Yeah. You know, the thing that struck me about Prancer after reading these chapters and kind of doing the mental prep of thinking them through was that this is a fantastic mirror for what Victoria is trying to do here. The first thing that we like the sole thing we know about him, basically, not the sole thing. The main thing we know about him is that he was trying to set up a different way of organizing villains.
Yeah.
And something that was more suited to the realities of the post-apocalypse world. And he had his own ideas back then about what that would look like. It looks like now his ideas have evolved, actually, but that's still kind of his idea is you know, times are changing and we have to do things differently than they were done before. And that's exactly what Victoria is doing, just in a different way and for the heroes.
Yeah, I like that connection a lot. I like it a lot. And I like at the beginning of these, I think it was these chapters, maybe it was this section. It's all blurring together to me now, Matt, but Victoria like takes a look at Hollow Point on a map. Actually, maybe it is next chapter. I don't remember. Anyway, Victoria takes a look at Hollow Point on a map and finds out that crime-wise, it's doing okay. It's actually maybe doing better than some of the areas around it, which is, I think, like them giving themselves some success. But I think we're connecting Hollow Point and Prancer, and we're seeing, okay, we might have won here, but what did we create in that process?
Right.
And I think it's going to be very interesting to see where his character goes. I'm really looking forward to getting some more information on him and how he's doing and what he believes these days.
Yeah, me too. So we move on into 8.6 and we pick up pretty quickly right after that last chapter. Victoria is musing aloud to her teammates, Tress and Capricorn, how one thing their team has in common across all of the members is tenaciousness.
So is that true for all of them?
I think in different ways. I mean, that's kind of the case they make, is that they're all people who've had to struggle and come through. But definitely they all have their own twist on it, right? I don't know. Do you disagree?
No. I was just doing that thing where I challenge things for no reason.
I mean, I would say yeah, I don't know. There's some that I would call more tenacious than others, I guess. But
yeah, I don't know how you like build tenacity into like a brand unless you're Jack Black. But she's definitely not wrong, I don't think.
Yeah.
But again, I think this is like her kind of starting to drum up support and build her frustration levels towards these damn shitty dressed villains that they have to go take out now because this cannot stand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's funny how much energy she spends ragging on the villains when like they haven't put that much energy into their own costumes. Like Capricorn has a really nice costume.
Yeah, their names, they just kind of throw them out there and say, nah, okay, that's what I am now.
Yeah, isn't her costume like assembled from like a bargain bin of costume parts?
Yes.
So, I mean, come on, Victoria, come on. Yeah, so Sveta, once again, doesn't like people talking about things that remind her that she's a mutant. Yeah,
and again, Matt, here we have more story spending time priming us that Sveta is not doing okay. She's got issues going on at home that she can't talk about with anyone except for one person, but then they get interrupted. And then she's got she knows the war is here, and maybe she's not as dealt with her current state as she puts off as she is, especially after this moment where she almost lost control. I think the book is throwing a lot of red flags at us around Sveta, and I don't think she can snap them all up with her tendrils.
I think you're right. And Victoria's distracted. This is everyone's kind of getting their turn, and when it's Sveta's turn, Victoria's not paying attention. Mm-hmm. So they join up with a largish group of heroes: Fumehood, Lighter, Foxtrot. We have 12 capes in total from different teams. We don't know all of their names.
Yeah, so this really serves as the whole everybody's working together, team breakthrough strategy, trial run 1.0, right?
Yep.
I'm just going to call it the Taylor maneuver.
Sounds good.
So this is big, not just for stopping this group of bums, but for sending a message to both the heroes and the villains that they're super serious about all this stuff, which I think Victoria all but declares outright in her later conversations with Foxtrot. She says, in an ideal world, I'd like to do something here that would get us attention, enough that any abstainers would feel like they need to join if they wanted to share the limelight. But that's all secondary. For now, we live and let live, and we fix what's broken. And that's a pretty good mission statement, if I ever heard one.
Yeah. I mean, it's realistic, and it makes sense. So Tress and Antares lead the attack, with Foxtrot keeping pace with her sneaky blink, strangery teleporty thing. Yeah, and we get a little judgment from Victoria on Foxtrot, right? Like she says she's thinking about how fast she rose up in the ranks of her place, and how she seems like super good with her power for a not very active cape. Like I think she only appeared on the scene a year ago. So she makes the assumption that she must have been a cape before and probably not a hero one. So now she's made the assumption that this person was a villain before, which is not a lot of evidence to support that. But I think we have to remember that Foxtrot is the one that like spoiled their whole plan in Hollow Point, and it's the one that brought Advanced Guard in. So we know she doesn't already like this person very much. So maybe we're seeing a little bit of projection here on this person that Victoria doesn't like. Yeah, possibly. I think we're definitely meant to be paying attention to Foxtrot. Yeah. So she calls in to base again and finds Kenzie still there, but Chris is gone. On the phone, Rain mentions that they can call him Precipice for now.
Continuing the tradition of members of this team just picking names in a rush, and then they're just them forever.
Yep. I mean, Victoria's already started thinking of him as Precipice.
Yeah.
In fact, that threw me off because I forgot, because I don't know, because my brain doesn't work sometimes. I forgot that he had told them that. So later when it's like Precipice says something, I'm like,
who's that?
Who's Precipice? Yeah, right. So Kenzie's camera feed shows that Trial and Error have met up with a larger group, including 3 Cape villains. They're still being harassed by Flapper, Sprite, and Shortcut, but those 3 aren't really making any headway. Victoria then flashes back to when she asked her parents about Marquis while in the asylum. And it's so basically this idea of something about villains and their treasures.
Ding. It's a zone out counter. What are we up to?
Well, just one so far, which
one of the episode, but
one of the episode, but this has been 3 chapters. This is quite a stretch of being present for Victoria.
You're right. The fascinating thing about this to me is, like, once you've seen enough of these Victoria zone outs, you begin to see a pattern behind her zone outs, right? It normally seems to start with a memory of before the accident happened. It's usually a memory with her mom imparting some Carol-like lesson, and then this inevitably shifts to a memory of the incident or her life after the incident, her life in the hospital, because her whole existence is now filtered through that 2 years of her life. And she finds this debilitating to a point where it almost starts like a cycle of drowning. And then she's usually interrupted by something happening in the real world and then comes out of it. And this cycle, like, I think it's intentionally designed that way. And I think we've seen it so many times, we can see a design behind it. And I just love this idea of everything always starts with a memory before the incident, but it eventually becomes filtered through something that happened in that hospital, because that is key to every moment of her life. As far as she's concerned, it all goes through that.
Yeah. No, that's great. That is exactly the pattern, I think. And I also think that she recovers from this one faster, and it's like she doesn't lose time the way she often does. And I really think there's something to this idea that she's like more in the zone in these chapters.
I think you're probably right. One of the things that did jump out to me here, and I might be totally mistaken about this, I didn't have time to go back and research to the level I needed to, but she kind of third persons her time in the hospital here. She pushes some of it onto the wretch itself, like when she asks about Marquis, the wretch is the one that types out the letters. The wretch had typed out one word. Now she could have possibly done this before, but I don't remember her doing it. I don't remember her separating the 2 parts of herself way back then into Victoria thinks it, but the wretch, the physical actions are all done by the wretch, which, as I'm remembering it, is something completely separate from me already, even at that point back in time.
I mean, that's fascinating. That even sort of strikes me as a bit of healing, that she doesn't identify with that person as much, that she's able to distance herself from it. I don't know if that's good or bad, but potentially good.
I think you could read it as good, because I think this idea, like, part of her problem is she can't see herself as anything more than the wretch, and as anything more than that blob of flesh. Mm-hmm. And she's got to learn to separate herself from that. That is not that she is not that anymore. And the force field is a literal reminder of that thing that's following her around everywhere. So so distancing herself of it might be a good thing. I could also see it's a bad thing, because it's like it is also, yes, a part of you. It's part of who you were, and it's, if this force field stays the way it is, it's part of who you are going to be.
Yeah. Well, I think she's thought of herself as like a wretch before, but yeah, this is definitely the first, or I don't know, not definitely, but I feel like this is the first time she refers to herself as the capital wretch.
Yeah. I don't remember. I honestly don't remember if that's ever been done, that the version of her in that form, she called outright the wretch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let us know, people.
Yeah. Call us out. If we're wrong, please let us know.
Yeah, right. So Cryptid now shows up on the scene, having transformed into a flying form and then into a giant grub pregnant with writhing fetal ghouls.
Jesus Christ. What are the emotions they're going to be describing this one? I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah.
I can't even speculate. That's insane.
Yeah, no, you're right.
His forms just keep getting better.
Yeah, seriously. So I'm so mad we didn't get to see the fetal ghouls.
Yeah, and it's so weird because sorry, go ahead. We'll get to it in a second.
Okay. Rain and Ashley also appear in hologram form to survey the scene.
Yeah, the giant mommy caterpillar also has just holograms on its shoulder of two more of the team members.
Yeah.
And this interaction when he's you're one fucked up dude, and he's calling attention to which part of that he disagrees with, and it's the man part because he's got babies in his tummy. And then Rain just nopes out. He's just nope, I'm gone. I'm not going to be a hologram on your shoulder anymore. It's such it's really great. I think it's a really great kind of weird but also funny moment in this battle, which I don't know, but I never felt and I don't think we're supposed to feel a lot of very serious threat behind this portion of the fight. I don't know if you did. I don't think the tension's on whether or not they're gonna win. I think the tension is on whether or not Victoria's whole new plan is going to work. So I don't think any of this kind of silliness dispels the tension.
Yeah, no, I mean, it felt like they were just building up an absolutely overwhelming force, and that they were definitely going to win. The only tension was maybe somebody gets injured by Error's power, like one of the heroes injures another hero or kills another hero. That would have been a possible outcome, I felt like I was pretty sure they were going to win. The heroes attack from all sides, from rooftops. Trial uses Cleat as a giant wrecking ball, which is pretty awesome. A combination of Foxtrot's harassment and Victoria using the Wretch to stop the flying ball of death in its tracks solve that problem. And then I wanted to point out Fume Hood is the star player here. And due to her ranged, explosive, debilitating, but non-lethal power, she just takes down a huge number of the unpowered people and also some of the powered people. It's a very good power for this type of large scale fight, I think. Yeah,
and I think it's really important to see Fume Hood and have Victoria see Fume Hood as kind of a success story of redefining herself, right? Because she has presumably, from what we've seen, succeeded at it. She was this person who made these mistakes and tried really hard to change. And we had this moment where she got shot and we're like, oh my God, the world is not going to let you change, is not going to let you improve yourself, is not going to let you become a better person. But so far, she's managed to overcome that. And I think that's something that all of our main characters need to see.
Yeah, Victoria noted that she had a really good attitude when she showed up, and she's a star player here.
Yeah.
And I like this bit where Victoria is thinking, we were working more as a collective now, trading off, being aggressive, being different without judgment. This was what I wanted this organization to be. It would take tuning. Yeah.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I thought this was a great sort of encapsulation of what's going on in her mind. This isn't how she described it to the other guys. Actually, this is focusing more on the combat side of we get a large group of people, we bring them together for particular operations like this, and we don't focus so much on taking credit. We let people shine in the role where they're going to shine. And it's sort of an expression of her personality and an expression of what she wants this organization to be. Yeah,
it's so funny throughout this whole series. There's been talk about building a team that has where everyone's strengths play off each other and cover each other's weaknesses, and how hard it is to put a team together like this of people. And Victoria's just kind of said, why don't we just draw from everyone? what team of 5 people can do that grabbing the best person for a situation from all teams could do. And I think it's something that probably will just work better as long as you can get past the selfishness and the need for recognition and the need to advance and all these kind of innately human traits that each one of these people have. And I think that's like they had a success here. They won. But I think that the problem is going to be how you keep this ball rolling in a way that it stays together and cohesive, and people don't succumb to their human nature.
Right, because there's got to be a reason this hasn't already happened,
right?
And why this didn't happen in Bet all the time, because the capes by their nature don't take well to this kind of friendly buddy cooperation. They rub each other the wrong way, but yeah, I mean, thematically we've got Prancer trying to do something like this for the villains. We've got Victoria trying to do something like this for the heroes. We've got Goddess, whose whole theme as a villain was doing this to a whole planet.
Yep.
So like, yeah, this is where our themes are lasering in on right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Victoria now backs off a bit and lets Sprite and Shortcut take the lead, since this is their arrest and she doesn't want to steal their thunder and like that doesn't want that to be kind of what the situation is perceived as. She just wants to showcase what this concept can do and develop it to the point where they can potentially take down Goddess.
And there's your second Goddess cliffhanger of the week.
Yep.
Goddess is the threat, everyone. Goddess on the horizon. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great end of this chapter, which was a pretty fun, pretty action-packed chapter. We had 2 kind of chapters in a row that had a fair amount of action in them, and I thought it was fun and enjoyable. And it had been a little while since we got to really dive into just some fun cape battling. I enjoyed it, and I'm really into where the story is going at this point. And I know there's another chapter out that's been out for a few days that I have not read, and I'm sure you have. But I'm excited for where the story's going. I think all our characters are in really interesting places. I could see the conflicts, the intercharacter conflicts that are becoming, as well as those big conflicts on the horizon. And that's always a really good place to be in a story. So
yeah, I agree.
I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, back into the pattern.
Yeah.
All right, Scott, let's wrap it up with some name game.
All right.
First, precipice.
This is like a big cliff.
Yeah, it's like an edge. You're going to fall off. You're on the edge.
Yeah. So I mean, this is very interesting, right? Because like this is what he picks.
Yeah. I mean, powers wise, he can't really fall to his death.
Yeah.
So that's where that works, I guess.
True. But I mean, like, does he still in his mind think he's in like a really bad spot where he's in a lot of danger still?
That's what was interesting to me is when we last saw him, it didn't feel like it.
Right.
But the name suggests that he might feel that way.
Or perhaps this is an old name that he came up in the middle of, oh God, they're after me. And he just hasn't bothered to come up with a new one, and he's much less concerned about it. And that's why he's not really thrilled with the name, because he feels like it doesn't fit him anymore. But
yeah, that might be it too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, when I read it, I was like, that one's a little opaque to me. I'm not having a lot of ideas of what that could mean.
Yeah.
And then foxtrot.
This is a dance.
Yeah.
They're just dancing.
Yeah.
I don't really know what kind of dance it is. I think it's like
also
a waltz kind of.
It's also, isn't it the NATO phonetic letter for F, which
yes,
for some reason it just strikes me that the woman who is always joking and trying to like enjoying punny names would try to, I don't know, make some kind of spin there. Who knows?
For F?
Yeah.
What?
You know, the F word, Scott.
Oh.
But what is, I mean, but her power is basically teleporting and you know, creeping up on people and stuff. I guess that's like a dance.
Yeah, she's like dancing around. Like she's like they lead her and she teleports and follows, and it's a dance.
Yeah,
I like it. I like it.
Yeah,
it
I
works.
Like it too. Yeah, I like it. All right, discussion question, Scott. Here we go. Compare and contrast Victoria's new hero organization idea to the PRT's organization.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what you guys come up with.
Me too. And that's all we got for you this week on We've Got Ward. You guys are all part of this show, so feel free to provide us with advice, questions, or thoughts on this week's reading.
You can reach us via email at gotwormpod@gmail.com or on Twitter @gotwormpod. My personal Twitter is @ScottDaily85, and Matt's is @MoreDinamail Foxtrot.
If you're not already subscribed to We've Got Ward, we strongly recommend you do so and never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else in the world you can listen to podcasts.
As always, you can find this, all the other podcasts we do, and all of our writing, essays, film, and TV criticism, and more at dailyplanetfilms.com. Don't forget that if you are listening to this on the day it came out, that is Friday, July 27th, tonight at 9:30 p.m. Central Time, the Daily Planet Book Club is meeting once again. This time to discuss Salman Rushdie's controversial novel, The Satanic Verses. And that's going to be a really interesting one, Matt.
It's going to be quite a thing.
It's going to be a struggle, I think, to talk about this and sound intelligent. But we're going to do our best.
Yeah. And if you like any of our shows and want to support them, consider donating to our Patreon account, patreon.com/dailyplanetfilms. You can donate $1 a month or whatever else you can afford. Supporting us on Patreon gives you tons of great bonuses like voting in our quarterly fan art contests, Q&A sessions, access to live streams of our recording sessions, and our excellent Discord chat, which people were just talking about today, that it's the best Discord that they're in. Wow. I don't know if you saw that discussion.
I did not. Since I've been on vacation, I have been not doing my due diligence of hanging out in Discord. Thanks, guys.
Wow. Yeah. Special thanks to new Planeteers, Sky's Edge, and John F. at the $1 level, Captain Planet Iris at the $10 level, and Kryptonian Kira upgrading to the $20 level. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, guys. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. We appreciate it so much. And as always, make sure you go over to Wildbow's Patreon, patreon.com/Wildbow, and donate to him as well. It is his world, and we're just playing in it.
And if you can't afford to donate right now, that is absolutely okay. You can instead help us out by heading on over to Apple Podcasts and leaving us a rating and a review. Once again, 2 weeks in a row, no new reviews to read. It's very upsetting.
Yeah.
Fix it. How do I know if you guys like me or not? Do you like me?
I know. Yeah, we haven't heard from you in over a week.
Do you like us?
Well, that's it for the show this week. Next week, we'll hopefully all be back to normal and covering chapters 8.7 and 8.8.